want to welcome everybody to today's webinar is formative. And I always just kind of like to give my definition of what this vendor is about. And the quickest way I could come up with for formative is just a real-time formative assessment and collaborative tool to be utilized by teachers. And I'm sure the formative team will expand upon that definition today and provide you an overview of what formative is about. We have Cherie Fallon, sorry.
You got it.
And Virginia Nugent with us from Formative. If you have any questions, we do have their contact information in our online marketplace. If you just log into that and click on the Formative logo, it'll come up with Virginia's contact information. She'll be your sales contact. But Cherie is going to lead discussion today in the webinar. So I'll hand it over to you, Cherie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Cherie Fallon. I am the brand new, as of Monday, Manager of Professional Development at Formative. I have been an educator for 18 years. It's only been about a year since I've stepped out of that role. So I am really happy to be back into my area of expertise with professional development. And I will be drawing upon that in our time together today. And then there's a picture there of Virginia. She's traveling right now, so she's here, but not here, just so you can get a visual. Both Virginia and I live in Texas. I'm in the North Texas area, and she's in the South Texas area. And we are excited about getting to spend some time with you. And my goal for your takeaways for this session are just having a broad picture, 30,000-foot view of what we do, who we are, and what we're all about. And then hopefully you'll have an opportunity to begin to imagine the ways in which we could support the goals that you have for your teachers and students this year. So just a quick background on Formative. I always like to share this, again, with my educator hat on. The co-founder of this company, Craig Jones, was a middle school science teacher, and he found it really time-consuming and difficult for him to go outside of teaching and planning to aggregate data in ways that he could actually use it for his students. And so it was that moment of frustration that led him to actually learning how to code and build Formative. So Formative was built for teachers by teachers. Ultimately, the vision of Formative is that through more frequent formative assessments, the need and the reliance upon that postmortem summative assessment data will fall away. Touching in with kids each day is the best way for us to know exactly how we're doing and where we need support. So in a high level way, this Venn diagram gives you a good idea of what is formative. We take all the things from an assessment platform, as well as the tools and some of our favorite powerful instructional tools, and we combine those. Our ultimate goal is to be a one-stop shop for you. We incorporate, you're able to embed and work with lots of the other resources and tools that you're using in Formative. But because we also have the assessment platform side, what you can do is actually track all the data with all of your initiatives. So when we think about the data, I'm going to skip through some of these things. So take a second and kind of reflect on this image. What are your thoughts when you see this one? Nicole, I'm going to call on you because I can see you. What are you thinking when you think about this image?
When I look at this image, I think about that there are different ways to demonstrate learning. Sometimes it's a gradual, sometimes it's an increase and a decline and another increase, but each one of them is a path to demonstrate learning.
Beautifully stated. I could not have stated it any better. Nicole, I'll pay you later. But the idea is that's right, because this is real, isn't it? Like we go through the same cycles ourselves as adults when we're learning something new. It sure would be nice if all of our kids moved through that top row in a progression that's easy to understand. But the truth is, you might be really on top of it one day, and the next day it may look like you've never heard about this concept before. So the idea behind formative assessment, if we're only checking in at the end, we may not be gathering that whole learning journey, that full picture. Thank you for that, Nicole. So number one, informative, is tagging your standards. So we always want to start with your content standards, right? But here's what I think is really especially beautiful about formative. You don't have to stop there. So in the event that you have some additional initiatives, some other standards beyond that content standard, AVID, for example, or if there's a particular SEL initiative or framework that your campus is using, when you are able to add multiple standards where appropriate, then now we're able to start developing a broader picture of what's actually going on with each kiddo. And furthermore, anything that could be tracked is trackable when we tag those standards. We're also able to track growth over time. So back to that image that Nicole so adeptly explained for us, when we're able to see, once every few days or each day, how we're doing, then we're able to provide the support that kids need when they need it. Not once that unit of instruction has concluded, and then now we're left with, well, how do we intervene, right? Tracking those standards over time allows us to make decisions about our tier 1 instruction, as well as what are those maybe small group or individual supports that kids need. This is something that is still in development, but just to give you a little sneak peek, our development team is working on a new feature, standards progress over time, so that, and again, none of these are things that we haven't all figured out how to do in one way or another, right? If you know what I mean when I say VLOOKUP, then you have done the work. When I was a campus instructional coach, I had taught myself how to do all kinds of weird things in Excel so that I could actually pull data from all 27 places that existed and put it in one place for my teachers so they could actually use it. There's one problem is collecting data and ensuring that it's authentic. And then the next problem is, so now what? What do we do with that? So that is something that we'll be launching sometime this fall. For now, this GIF, there's a lot going on, but this is an image of, this is what your dashboard looks like. So when you've assigned a formative, we pride ourselves on making the things that you're already doing easier, more effective, and more efficient. So this is what it would look like if you've assigned a formative. You can see the data in every which way. You can see what was the proficiency by each question. You could see what the actual individual answers were for each question. You can easily send feedback to students, for example, if you're noticing that there's a common misconception is popping up over and over. The fact that formative is in real time, that's something that Craig mentioned at the top. That's something that we do, I've never seen in any other platform. So when I say real time, I really mean in real time. If you were working in a formative right now that had 10 questions, as soon as you entered your response for question 1, it pops up on my dashboard immediately. So we don't have to wait until the end of the assessment to see how kids are doing. We can actually see how they're doing as they're doing it and provide those supports as needed. It's really easy to share data among PLCs. So if there are any particular data protocols or expectations around common planning, anything that you're doing in formative can easily be shared with a team or with that team leader in order to better and more efficiently facilitate those conversations. And I should have said this at the top, I am going to pause and take a breath every so often as I'm going through this stuff. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop anything in the chat. Otherwise, I will be pausing in just a moment to kind of see how we're doing. So when we think about the word formative assessment, I feel like at this point, most people think of the term exit tickets. It's almost become synonymous with the idea of formative assessment. The way that formative works in real time, I'm trying to coin this new phrase. Let me know what you think. Why do I have to wait till the end of the period to see how you're doing? Could I try an entrance ticket instead? What if we did a pre-assessment at the beginning of class? And then that allows me to actually make the best use of the time I have with each student right now. In reality, the best exit tickets are only as effective as the time and the bandwidth of each teacher to sit down when, at the end of the day, at night when they're at home, and sort the exit tickets and decide who needs what. If you were doing some of your formative assessments informative, you can actually provide those individual or small group needs right now when the kids are with you. Common assessments, back to the PLC conversation. If you were a school-wide or district-wide partner with formative, you would have the ability to actually create an official common assessment where whoever is building that assessment, let's say it's an administrator, instructional coach, or a department head, you toggle on, this is a common assessment, and it automatically goes straight out to those teachers ready to assign. And from that point, it can no longer be edited. So it's an easy way to share common assessments while also being able to maintain the integrity of your data. There are options for giving more formal assessments if that is a need. We do offer a secure browser called Respondus. That would be something that you could add if that was a need for your school or district. And there are some features where you can actually make some adjustments considering that this is a more formal summative assessment, like time limits, whether or not there's a time, if kids get accommodations, you can set those at the student level or at the assignment level. You can also determine whether or not kids get their scores returned to them. So if we're doing an informal formative assessment together, maybe I want the kids to know whether they got it right or wrong right now. On a formal summative, I probably don't want that option. So there's ways to go in and make those changes. I'm going to pause right there before I go on to the next module and see, does anyone have any questions or comments about what we've seen so far? Okay, I don't see anything in the chat.
No questions.
Okay, here we go. So thinking about pedagogy, how does formative support your pedagogy needs? Ultimately, formative is a tool that makes it realistic to make those instructional shifts where we're actually centering students and their needs. This is our instructional model, which, as you are well aware, is very similar to a lot of other best practices out there. The engagement piece and then the analysis piece are key, where we can then go back and make adjustments to that instruction. So I mentioned this earlier, just to show you what that looks like. In a formative where, let's say students are doing some kind of a short constructive response, for example, I'm able to go in, it pops up on the side, it kind of looks like a text message thread. I can actually send a message to an individual student. So for example, if I'm noticing, oh, my good friend Virginia, she forgot to refer to her notes. I'm picking on Virginia because she's my actual friend. I could send her a message and say, Virginia, remember to reference your notes. The other thing that I love about formative, I've never seen another platform that does this. That feedback loop works both ways. Students can actually generate that feedback as they're moving through a formative. If they are lost or they have a question, they can actually send a message to the teacher, which then pops up on the responses tab. I sort of high level mentioned accommodations earlier, but just to give you a little bit more detail on that, you can go in at the student level and set universal accommodations like time limit extensions or text to speech for those kiddos that might have that in their paperwork. when you do that, you set it and forget it. You never have to go back and have that moment where you're wondering, oh, did I forget to give so-and-so their accommodation? Once you set it at the student level, everything informative from that point forward will include that accommodation. We also have a digital whiteboard, which there are some ways that you could actually use formative almost like an LMS if that's a need in your school or district, or certainly for some blended or some flipped learning opportunities. There's an interactive whiteboard where you can work with the concepts and materials live with kids, but then also retain that artifact where it's easy for all kids to refer back to later on. I lost my mouse. We also have some really exciting item types, like videos, for example. You can embed a video, either something from YouTube, if that's allowed in your school or district, or you can upload a video or something that you've pulled down from one of your other instructional materials. We've also added the timestamp adding questions feature that you might be familiar with from some other platforms. You can create questions that go along with a video at certain timestamps, and there are unlimited options for what those questions can look like. I know in some other platforms, you can do the timestamp questions, but I think you're limited mostly to multiple choice. Informative, you can pause anywhere and ask the kids to respond in a variety of ways, including audio. If you've got, whether it's SPED paperwork or English language learners, audio responses are one of those ways that formative helps support kids in showing what they know in the way that's best for them. You can also create audio. So if you wanted to do a listening assessment, for example, you can create an item type where you're recorded, the kids are listening and then responding. Otherwise, kids can respond in an audio item as well. We talked about video. The kids can create videos as well. There is my favorite item type is called free response, where you create the question, you tag it as a free response question, and then students get to choose how they respond. That's obviously, highly engaging and motivating, but it also allows for you to get a better picture of what kids actually know and are able to do, because we're expanding the ways they can show us what they know. And again, we pride ourselves on being that one-stop shop. Of course, there are other tools out there that do some of these things, but are they able to track the efficacy of those learning experiences right next to all of the other data you're collecting on a regular basis? You can also use rubrics in formative. Once you toggle on that you're using a rubric for this item, my favorite part about this, and secondary English background, so this one feels really important to me, the rubric is available for the kids. It's not a secret that we hold on to until they've finished the thing. When we are using a rubric in formative, the kids can actually be encouraged to open the rubric and use it to help craft their responses. But back to the efficiency piece, when I am analyzing student responses on an analytic rubric in formative, it's as easy as click, 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 done. And then that data is aggregated for me. We also have teacher-paced mode. So again, like some of the other platforms you may be familiar with, you can use formative as your teaching tool by actually turning on teacher-paced mode, which only allows kids to see on their end what you are moving through. You can actually switch from teacher-paced mode to student-paced mode within the same formative, depending on your needs for that learning experience. We also have, it's not quite as robust as a full plagiarism checker, but on our short answer or free response items where there's some kind of a constructive response. If a student, I know none of your students would ever do this, but there are students in the world who might just copy and paste something they found elsewhere. Formative will give you an alert when that's the case. Before I go into the last section, how are we doing? Questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to keep going. So streamlining your work. We've talked about this a few different ways, but ultimately we're really all about working smarter, not harder. So we've done some research-based studies to show overwhelmingly teachers believe that using formative fits well into what they're already doing and that it's a valuable tool for their classrooms. We also are level 3 ESSA, which is important to think about your, COVID related needs, as we've all been learning and figuring out these past couple of years. Formative is something that you would be able to use those federal funds for, and it actually makes it pretty easy to track the efficacy of those additional efforts. Here's a favorite for teachers, especially those who are new. And if you have any teachers who may not be super interested in a tech platform or another tech platform, you can take anything that exists and turn it into a formative. You can pull in a document, anything from Google Drive, an image, and actually turn it into a digital assessment with a few clicks. In the event of a PDF, like you're seeing on this GIF, you upload it, you select it from wherever it lives on your device or on your cloud drive, and you click where you want to add questions, pulls over, you turn it into a digital assessment. That's always a great way for those who are new to formative to sort of have a beach entry into how this can actually help streamline your work. You can also embed any other apps that you may already be using or other instructional tools. There's some examples here. Almost anything that you're doing with kids, you could actually pull it into formative in one way or another. The reason, again, why that is beneficial is thinking back to efficacy. If I go and do a really fun thing with kids in Flipgrid, how do I know if it was effective? Am I able to put it next to, it was tied to my standards naturally, but am I able to put it next to the other learning experiences we had that were also tied to that same standard? Embedding something into formative allows you to be able to develop that broader picture. So just some other examples of things that some of our partners are already integrating with formative. Our goal is to bring it all together and really sort of give you that balanced playing field there. We also have a library. As a partner district or campus, you would be able to create your own library of items that you're sharing among your staff. We also have a fairly robust library of teacher created content from all over the world, actually. It is a little bit of buyer beware. There's not necessarily a vetting process. It's not quite teachers pay teachers, but you do have to use your discretion when you're looking. But no one has to enter into formative as a new formative user from scratch. There are things that are available that could be taken and easily transformed to align to your specific standards or your specific needs. For collaboration among PLCs, I thought this was super cool. I didn't realize we could do this when I first started working here. We could be working in a formative together, live. I'm building, 1 and 2, you're building 3 and 4. It's live and the updates happen every second. From there, we could also easily add co-teachers. We know that, goodness, there's a lot of paperwork for the paperwork often when it comes to our SPED teachers, folder teachers, co-teachers. It is a gift of time that we're not always granted for our co-teachers and inclusion support, other SPED teachers to be able to actually plan with the content area teachers. Formative helps because everyone can be a part of what we're doing from the get-go. And again, with the data tracker, just imagine how much time our teachers could be saving by not having to replicate the data that they have on individual students so that they could share it with a colleague. If it's all in the same place and we're all able to see it together, there we go with the efficiency and the efficacy. If you were to become a partner with Formative, we do integrate with your SSO, your SIS, and several LMSs. Depending upon your gradebook, we can even set up grade passback. That is another feature that teachers really love. And again, efficiency. Oftentimes when we do some learning or some assessment in a digital platform, now we have to go and enter those grades in manually into our gradebook. In Formative, most of the time we are able to figure out a way. Of course, there are some variables here, but we are definitely able to integrate into those systems that you're already using. Before I go into this last piece, does anyone have any questions? Okay.
No, you're doing great, Sherry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate you. And I'm like, I'm just doing a lot of talking. I know it's a webinar and that's kind of how it goes, but I like the active engagement. So thank you, Nicole. When it comes to our bilingual ESL kiddos, or even world languages for that matter, you can set the language out at the account level if that were a thing that were a need for your school. I've worked with some schools in Texas where they have some kiddos who are brand new to the country, and that has been really helpful for them to be able to set Formative into their home language as they are becoming oriented into their new situation here in Texas. We mentioned the accommodations earlier. There's also, back to the unlimited ways to show what you know. So I mentioned the different item types earlier. This is the first view where you can see what all of those are, especially when we're thinking about whether it's world languages or language learners, or honestly, just for variety every now and then to mix it up, right? Using things like audio and video responses really broaden the scope for the ways that kids can interact with content, work through their own learning journey, and then show us what they know. On the right, you can see each state and state assessment has slightly different terms for the different item types. We, in Texas, for example, instead of short answer, our state test has taken on the term short constructed response. So if you all were interested in learning a little bit more about how our item types might align with those that your students will be experiencing on their testing, we would love to do that work with you. There's some samples there. We're not going to do those together. Okay, so that was like fast and furious. That's really a high level overview. If we have the time and the bandwidth, I wouldn't mind logging into Formative and showing you a couple of things about how easy it is to work. Craig, how are we doing on time?
We're doing good. Got about a half hour still.
Nicole, since you're my actively engaged friend right there at the top, is there anything in particular? What is your, if you don't mind me picking on you a little, could you tell me a little bit about your role, where you work and the students that you serve?
Yes. I am in Miller Public Schools in Omaha, Nebraska. And I know that I am also a curriculum and instruction facilitator for secondary social studies.
Oh,
I know
awesome.
some of my colleagues, I believe, in math utilize Formative already.
Oh, great.
And so I just wanted to learn a little bit more about that and how that might apply to my content area, especially in relationship to the fact that it's a lot more, probably written responses, as well as, selected response. So just wanting to learn. I had heard about it in conversation and just wanted to learn a little bit more.
thank you for that background. And
Mhm.
your story there is a very common story that we hear at Formative.
Mhm.
I don't know who it is, who is spreading the news among the math friends. I'm not sure how it is always with our math friends, but we do some really wonderful things with math specifically. But this is often the case. It's usually our social studies and ELA friends that are like, we heard about this thing. What is it? How will it work for us? So I mentioned that free response item earlier. I'm going to, on the fly, make up a social studies free response item just so we can kind of see, you know, what that looks like. And let's see if I can type. Okay, so let's imagine we're going to ask the kids this. Now, I do not already have your standards loaded into my formative. So this is what it would be like if you were creating a formative from scratch. I'm going to go in to, here's the fun thing about the standards. Any standards that exist on Earth or even in your imagination can potentially be put into the formative platform. Just keep that in mind. I did check earlier today to be sure. Your standards are here. So I'm going to go down to, should I choose?
You're going to want to choose 2019. Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go with 8th grade US history, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Good job.
And then, and then from here, I would choose, if I found it really fast, that would be so cool. But you get the event here. You get how this works. So first I'm going to say, yep, these are the standards I want, confirm. Okay. And then now when I start typing, do you know the code for your standards, Nicole?
Yeah, it'll start SS.8.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Ooh, does that look like one?
yep, that one looks
thank
like,
you.
yeah. Oh,
As you can see, if
Yep.
you are in a role like mine, where you might do lots of things with lots of content areas across many states, then your list of standards might start looking a little cuckoo. Was it SS8?
yeah, it was SS8, and then it will have, if you type in civil again, it popped
Did
up.
it come up then?
Yeah. Well, one of them did it. It's not the exact one, but it's close enough.
Ooh.
Or the right there.
SS.8.
Yep.
Let's just pretend that's the one.
Let's just
It's not,
pretend that's
but
the
let's
one. Yeah.
pretend. And when you're doing this, you won't have 800 sets of standards in
Correct.
there to make it difficult to find. So what I love about this, once I've added it in, I can hover over it and it pops up, right? Like as CNI people, we often have our standards memorized. And teachers are often like, how do you do that? And the answer is because I'm messing with them all the time. From the teacher side, maybe not so much. You can hover over and see the standards. But I could also add, let's say you had, this is a like an SEL framework, CASEL standards. If I wanted to also add that, I can add multiple standards to an item to give me that, you know, broader view. So this is what it looks like from the teacher side. So let me show you what it looks like from the student side. And this is just a good practice. Whenever I'm building a formative, I like to pull over often and look at the student view and make sure everything looks the way I hoped. So for this one, this is that free response item where as soon as, you know, the kids see the question, it's open-ended, they could start typing in the box, or they push the plus and they get all of these options. Here's what I love about this. In the classroom, I was limited in my ability to receive and analyze and assess demonstrations of kids learning. Like, I'm not a robot, right? If I had, you know, like, do we still do raft projects in social studies or in any other content?
No.
That one, it's kind of like a choice board. I taught social studies for 1 year, so I learned
Oh,
about
okay.
that. But ultimately it's a choice board where the kids get to choose different
Oh.
variables for their output, right?
Yes, I guess the acronym I wasn't picking up on, but yes, a choice board,
Yeah,
absolutely.
right. So ultimately, this might be the type of item that I would develop a rubric for my assessment purposes, because ultimately I'm allowing the kids to show me what they know in whatever way works best for them. But then I'm able to pull it all into this one platform, one place, one assessment instrument, efficiently assessing everyone's learning. If I wanted to, you know, use an emoji for whatever type of item, responses have been submitted. Okay, great. Now I'm back to the teacher view. And I can see, oh, Cherie has responded. I can click in and see in the event that there's some kind of stimulus associated with the response, I can actually see it. It's not just, did Cherie get it right or wrong? I can actually see the response. If I have set it to auto grade, which is a thing, it would automatically, grade that by me entering in a correct answer. For this one, I didn't have it set that way. So I have this bar at the top that I can toggle and say, do I like this answer? Yep, I love it. These thresholds can also be set at the account level in the way that best fits your needs. That's the default. I could say, yep, this one is right. Okay, there's Cherie's response. I could send her a note and say, great job, remember your notes. And then the student would get that message right away. And again, if the student had submitted that response to me, it would pop up right away along with the response itself. What's great about this feature, this piece here, pretend like I had 30 responses there. Sometimes in the event of a short constructed response, which is one that I definitely want to show you, for social studies, which of course is applicable across content areas. But let's say, I'm putting on the hat of an 8th grade student. There are right answers to this question, right? Nicole, what is one of them that we would say for sure, if the kids really knew one thing about the causes of the Civil War, this is one of the things they would mention?
Equal rights for everyone.
Perfect. Equal rights. I'm going to enter that as one of the choices. And what I would end up doing to help myself with auto grading, I would put as many responses as I think my students might enter. In the event that it's either text dependent or there are right or wrong answers, the more you enter, the more opportunities kids have to get a correct answer. Back on the responses side, sometimes I've done my best to enter in what I think the correct answers could be. But a beautiful response comes in from a brilliant student named Nicole, let's say, and I go, oh, I had not thought of that, but that is an amazing response. I can toggle on, if I set it to auto grade, toggle it on to green, it's correct, and then formative will say, do you want to change everyone's answers? And I say, yes, I do. So every now and then, when the kiddos are, when they surprise you with something that they picked up on or latched onto that you just hadn't really anticipated, when you make a change to one student's response, whether or not it's correct or partial credit, Informative will say, do you want to make that change for everyone? Yes, of course, because this is all about working smarter, not harder, making our lives easier. When it comes to the library, so I'm gonna click the plus, and then again, these are, if you were partners with Formative, then all of these item types would be available. There are other types of Formative subscriptions where you would get some of these options, but we're showing you, the full meal deal here. So let's say I don't want to create the thing, or I know that there's something existing out there that I would really love some support on. So let's see. So maybe I'm looking through here and I say, oh, okay, you know what? This one looks great. I love it. I can either add that entire formative, or my favorite for thinking about formative assessment, I could decide, ooh, I really like this question. I want to add it to my formative that I'm already creating. All I have to do is click add. It says added, great, close it. Now I'm back over here. Here's that question. Now, in the event that the other person who created this were using a different standard set than you would be able to go in, untag whatever standard they had and then add your own. Of course, I happen to choose one that didn't have a standard tag to it, but note to self, no reason not to tag the standards when we're building these formatives. It is an easy way for us to keep ourselves focused on that learning journey. So on this one, it's a show your work item. So here's what that looks like from the kids' perspective. Oh, hush. Oh, why does it do that? Over here, I'll come back and show you that in a minute. Wait a second. Where something, it's not looking the way I'm imagining. Okay, so this is what I mentioned earlier, that you can now select student paced or teacher paced. When you do go into teacher paced mode, you can then change it back to student paced. So for example, if you were doing some sort of a pre-assessment and you didn't want the kids to be distracted with everything else that was in the formative, you could start out in teacher paced mode and then switch. But right now, I'm trying to get it back where there's grade pass back, depending upon your integrations. That's not what I'm doing.
What are you trying to do, Sheree?
Thanks, Virginia. I'm trying to kick it out where it will let me submit again.
Oh, because you already submitted it and it won't let you. If you did it in incognito, you can do it in incognito. Oh my goodness, I can't even talk right now.
I know, that's hard to say. I've done it before. It's not clicking for me right now, you guys. This is total presenter error here. But I was trying to show you what it looks like when, let's see if this works. If it doesn't, I'm not gonna force you all to wait with me while, oh, then I have to do the thing. Okay, here's what. So you are getting to see a lot of the fancy things as I'm clicking around and looking for what I'm trying to find for you right now. If I wanted to edit and assign only, these are some of those collaboration tools like we mentioned. If I wanted to publish it to the library, because it's a beautiful thing and I want to share it with the world, you could do that. Or often, I think this is what I'm going to do. What we end up doing is sharing a copy. No. And again, some of this, because we are this is a student platform. So there are some workarounds that we end up using when we're doing things for professional development or work with teachers. Okay, I'm gonna pause on this right now because it's not doing what I want, and I know the answer is right in front of me, but it's just not clicking for me. Let me think about that one for a minute. What I wanted to show you was what it looks like on the kids' side when they go to edit their background, which ultimately this is what it looks like. So in this case, you could do some annotation this way. If you had a graphic or some kind of a stimulus that you wanted the kids to think about or use, you could put that into the show your work item, and then they can respond right on top. In the event that, you know, there was some kind of annotation or drawing, there's a text box, I'm typing here. I can move around, there's different lines, there's lots of different options for, you know, what kids can do. This is one of the reasons that our math friends really like Formative, because we've got a lot of built-in math tools, including graphing. You could also, while you are creating a formative, you can actually access a math keyboard so that you're actually using those actual symbols, and the math keyboard looks exactly the same for the kids. That's something that a lot of our partners are really excited about, that math functionality. Then I wanted to show you what it looks like to some of those other item types in Texas. Our newly revised state tests, especially on our like science and social studies, we have hotspot items, hot text items. We've got the functionality informative to build those, as well as match table grid, drag and drop. And I think the other one that comes up often is categorize. That one doesn't come up so often in Texas as far as a formal assessment. Does it in Nebraska? Yeah.
Not as much, no. I mean,
Okay.
a little bit, but not so much.
So for hotspot, I can input an image, a stimulus from my resources. And then all I have to do is actually click on the image itself. And anywhere I click, that becomes, oh, here's one. There's an actual science one from one of our Texas state tests. So to turn this one into a hotspot, I click. I can enter in my responses down here. And again, I'm tagging it to the standards. Any type of item, I can toggle on that show your work feature, which is really beautiful when we're thinking about, you know, obviously when we think about show your work, we always think about math. But wouldn't it be great if we could capture that evidence of thinking and learning for all of our kiddos across content areas? If I were using a rubric, I just toggle on rubric and I can either start from scratch. I can add as many, you know, layers, rows, columns, criterion as I would like. Once I have built some rubrics, then they're there for me to reuse. So then I've attached that one. When I go back to assess this item, it will show up as something that I can click through on those responses. So I read through it just like I would if I were grading on paper, but instead of marking the paper, I click here. Okay, great. It goes back to the kids.
So like in the case of the rubric specifically, like if we
Mhm.
had one, we wouldn't be able to take it from the source, the form it's currently in. We would need to input it into the system of formative, and then you could reutilize it.
That is correct. If you
Okay.
wanted to utilize it in that way,
Mhm.
that is the best way for you to do it. That is, so
Okay.
that's a limitation.
And then like when you're creating some of your questions or
Mhm.
modes, can you import anything in that currently exists? Or again, do we need to create it from scratch? Or transfer it over into the form that it was into this format?
Give me an example.
So let's say we already maybe had a Google Doc or a Word doc or something that had already had questions aligned with, like I saw an example in there, but that we had created
Mhm.
along lines with like a SHEG activity where I had the questions already in places for them where they put in evidence. Can we input that in there, or would we need to reset that up in that program?
So you can pull in anything from Google Drive. You can upload anything.
Mhm.
Let me show you what that might look like. Let's use, that's not the best example, but just for the purposes of what we're doing right now, I could take any document, drop it in. I know it'd be better if I had like a multiple choice test right here to grab for you.
Mhm.
But just to give you an idea of how easy it is, whatever you're dropping in, it essentially turns it into an image.
Okay.
Here it is. And so now I say, great, I want to create some questions. I want to add a multiple choice question off to the side, or I can click right on the image. So in the event that you had an activity that you know and love, and typically you make copies of that thing and hand it out to the kids, scan it, upload it, whatever way you have to make it digital, whether it's a PDF, a Word doc, a Google Doc, or just an image. And then essentially all I have to do is click. And then all of these item types pop up. So
Okay.
what you wouldn't be able to do is just scan a multiple choice quiz and it would automatically populate number one. And here's ABCD.
Right.
But it would allow you to say, so here's my document. I'm going to turn it into multiple choice. And then you can either, depending on how quickly you're trying to move through things and the sustainability of this assessment you're creating, if you want to do it quickly, I just click and then I say the right answer to that one is B. Boom. Now it almost operates like a Scantron,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Or if I want to go further, then I could actually copy and paste over my question, or I could retype it.
Okay.
And I'm able to select those answer choices there.
Okay.
Virginia, is there anything else you can think of that would be really super helpful to go over for now?
No, I think you covered a lot. I know there at Millard, Tammy Whitted, I believe. I might be saying her last name wrong.
No, you're correct.
She,
Yep.
yay. She's, obviously, she's with the math department, but they've been using us forever. So if you want to talk about somebody that'll sing our praises, you can definitely talk to Tammy. But if y'all want to take a look at possibly getting it for your social studies group, I'm more than happy to talk with you guys about that opportunity as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking me through walkthrough and like letting me see it in action. I just wanted to know more about it. I don't know if I know that I'm not in a place. We just went through our social studies adoption, so I'm not in a place to buy myself in my area, but I just wanted to see what it was. So thank you so much for sharing it with me.
Yeah, you're welcome. And when it comes to your adoption, what did y'all adopt, by the way?
It depends on the level, but
Oh,
we utilize TCI at the middle and some of high school.
and are there did it come with some digital,
Yes.
like a platform?
Yes.
Yeah, I know, depending upon the platform, just a little, tidbit I've picked up from some friends over the last several months. Oftentimes there are limitations in those platforms that are tied to the curriculum. So for example, I could build a beautiful assessment in that platform, but it's a closed system. I can
Right.
only build with what's available inside of it.
Yeah.
In Formative, it's pretty much, open for creating your own content or pulling things in. So there are some schools and districts who use Formative alongside their adopted materials,
Yeah.
just because of that, flexibility.
Right. And I mean, it's not just like, we also have brought in, we've been utilizing like mini DBQs. We also utilize Shag and things like that alongside it. So it's not just
Cool.
turn the page, or whatever lockstep into just what's
Right,
there.
right, right.
Like, so, when it comes to like, especially like short and medium cycles, if there are assessments, if there are things that we can create that can be suggested, that would be a resource.
Yeah,
It'd
wonderful.
be awesome. But thank you
Yeah,
so much for sharing it with
Yeah,
me.
you're so welcome. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. And thank you for being my active participant today. That definitely makes it easier and more fun when there's an actual person on the other end. So thank you,
You're welcome.
Nicole. It was
You're
so nice
welcome.
to chat with you.
Thank you all for providing the opportunity for me to learn a little bit. Now I'll be a little more familiar when somebody asks me about it,
So,
what it
oh
is.
yeah, I've seen Formative.
So,
Thank you. Have a great rest of your
yes,
day.
same to you.
Thanks for coming.
Yes.